Happy Sunday. LDS Church President Gordon B. Hinckley once said that living together in communities with respect and concern one for another is the hallmark of civilization. Today, I thought I'd talk about civility. And I'll be the first to admit that I can be a little ill-suited to this topic. While I would like to be as civil as a 19th century landed British gentry, I'm also not. and, am known for saying things like violence isn't the answer, but it's an answer. So civility isn't always my go-to when I'm backed into a corner. I'm more than capable of not just righteous indignation, but flat out uncivilized, good old-fashioned retributive indignation. I'm down for that. So that said, we are all one family under God. And no matter how angry I am or how threatened, because a lot of the time incivility, I feel like, comes out of being threatened more than being angry. It serves me well as a Christian to remember that my aggressors are my brothers and sisters in Christ. We are one family in one global house. All live under the same roof. So learning to settle our differences with civility is not only, something that we can use to virtue signal and say, yay, I was civil about that. It's also in our best interest. While the golden rule is usually offered as a guide, I think it's also a warning, because you could also read the golden rule as what you do to others, you should expect that they will do to you. On a related note, I'm reminded of a more modern proverb that you get more bees with honey. In the Book of Mormon, it tells stories of the decline of several civilizations. To an extent, the Bible does too, but it's very much a Book of Mormon thing. And each story presents a cycle of prosperity, pride, and then fall. These civilizations build up, become resource rich, become proud, and then fall. In almost every case, the seeds of decay begin with the violation of the simple rules of civility. Cooperation, humility, and empathy give way to contention, strife, and malice. As Christians, we're called on again and again to try and work together to help each other and to build a society that is free for and supports all our brethren and cisterns. There should be a word for that, like sorority and sorors. I guess that's it. Our brethren and sorors. From here on out, I'm going to use brethren just to mean brothers and sisters. It's like a non-binary thing, right? We're just going to go with it. So in taking up this sermon, I was reminded of a scene in the 1940 movie Brigham Young. And the first half an hour, 40 minutes of that movie is focused on Joseph Smith. Honestly, I don't even watch the rest of the movie, but I do like to rewatch the Joseph Smith part. So it's focused on him and not Brigham so much. Brigham's kind of a little side character. And that the Joseph Smith in that is a very young Vincent Price, if you can imagine Vincent Price as Joseph Smith. He's fantastic in the role. So in the film, Joseph explains how he sees Christians and societies functioning.
How do you do, sir? I'm Brigham Young. This is my friend, Heber Kimball.
I'm glad to meet you.
And we've come a long ways to see you. We want to ask you some questions about your church.
Gladly. I'd like to tell you about it. Would you sit down?
What's this about you folks calling yourselves saints?
Well, we believe that any man, dead or alive, who keeps the Ten Commandments is a saint.
You don't pretend to be the Lord himself, do you?
No, I'm just a mortal man, same as you or your friend here.
Well, this plan of yours you call a United Order, what's that?
It's not my plan. It's the Lord's.
Well, whosever it is, what is it?
Well, I suppose you'd call it the law of nature. You see, it's his idea that the land of Zion will be sort of like a beehive. Or like that anthill over there. With everybody doing his share of the work and getting his part of the profits. A place where everybody will have everything he can eat and use. There'll be great storehouses to keep food and things in for the sick and the poor, the old folks. You see, under a brotherhood plan like that, it'll be impossible for any one man to pile up a lot of goods or have power over his neighbors. That'll mean there'll be no social distinctions, no caste, no special privileges. Any more, I take it, than there is in that anthill over there. We had it once, but somehow we've all but lost it. We've got to get back to it again.
Well, that sounds all right. But then there'll always be lazy people, ambitious people. There'll be some honest ones and some dishonest ones.
What I'm telling you, Brother Brigham, is a revelation from the Lord. It's up to us to work it out. This isn't an easy religion.
Well, I'm not looking for an easy religion. I'm looking for one I can bring my family up decent in.
Joseph, dinner's ready.
Won't you stay and have dinner with us?
Well, thank you. We'd be glad to.
All right.
Beyond the message Joseph delivers there, which I absolutely love, there's also the nature of how he delivers that message. The gentleman questioning Joseph in the clip is Brigham Young, or the actor playing Brigham Young. And but it's Brigham before he's joined the church, just to give you some context for that clip. So this is Joseph Smith and Brigham Young's first meeting. And in this scene, you see Brigham's a bit confrontational. He's willing to talk to Joseph, but he's kind of disruptive in his little rebuttals and seems ready to argue with Joseph as well. Joseph kind of lays out how he sees a utopian society working, and Brigham says, hey, that won't work. And when Brigham says that, Joseph doesn't pound his fists against that tree behind him and demand to know what college Brigham went to and what makes him think that he knows what works and doesn't. Nor does Joseph say, hey, look, Jack, you're a buffoon. No. Joseph calmly and with self-assurance explains that it will take work for it to work. There will be people who are too lazy to work, Brigham complains, and there will be people too greedy to trust. He also complains. Both sides. Joseph doesn't scream and rant that his plan to deal with those sides is foolproof. Nor does he brush aside Brigham's concerns about the lazy and the greedy. Joseph accepts that it will take work. And he gives Brigham the dignified space to decide to help. LDS Bishop H. David Burton wrote, "The fabric of civil society tears when stretched thin by its extremities. Civility then becomes the measure of our collective and individual character as citizens of a democracy." It's a struggle, I know, to keep civil. It really is. I know it is. Probably know it better than some of you. Though we're reminded often of the story of Jesus calling for civility from Peter after Peter cuts off that Roman soldier's ear, it's also memorable that Jesus tossed over those money tables and cursed a date tree. So even the Lord himself was human, and he had his moments that could very much be argued he had his moments of incivility too. Even if even Christ struggled with remaining civil in the face of unbecoming and incivil actions, then how are we to do it? I didn't have a great answer, so I looked it up. I decided to see if I could find some suggestions. And the internet had a few tips. Though the internet could be very mired in the things that make us uncivil, it also gives us the chance to seek advice and discourse with people whom we might not have met or talked to otherwise. So the first bit of advice offered was to try and empathize with the uncivil person or situation that faces you. I think that's the difference between kind of the money flipping table situation with Jesus and the ear healing. Because when Christ flips those tables, he's disinterested in the motivation of the money changers in the temple. He just wants them out. But with the Roman soldier, Christ seems to kind of have an understanding the man is just doing his job. Forgive them, they know not what they do. And Christ takes pity on this soldier because he understands his actions, even if he knows they're wrong. The next bit of advice is to remove yourself from that incivility. And that can be hard when the situations are systemic, when it's societal or your workplace or your home or close family. Sometimes escaping people and situations that aren't civil is virtually impossible. However, when it can be done, don't engage. Walk away. You might lose that fight when you do that. And you might even kind of lose a little bit of dignity in the moment, because you look like you're retreating. You look like a coward maybe. But you'll save yourself so much more in keeping your integrity. I'm reminded of an old bit of advice, not that old once you hear it, but it's a phrase, and it says, even if you win a fight on the internet, you're still a loser. It's okay to walk away. Not engaging is kind of also its own piece of advice, certainly one that Christ took. He couldn't flee Herod or Pontius Pilate once he'd been taken into custody. So Jesus, he had to kind of face their prosecution and see it through to the end. But he refused to engage in their baiting and demeaning questions. He didn't really engage in that debate. When they demanded he explain himself or answer them, Jesus kind of simply says, that's what you say. He doesn't engage. He didn't necessarily back down from his own integrity or stance either. He just refused to offer further. What he was and what he'd said were already public. They were already there. And if Herod or Pontius Pilate or any of the people harassing him had really cared, they could have easily found this information. They just wanted a fight with him, and he wasn't going to give it to them. Another piece of advice that's on the flip side of that coin and related to our first piece of advice is to practice active listening. So instead of yelling and engaging and debating, kind of engage in the opposite direction. Listen, actively listen. And there's an old psych exercise that I've actually done in real life and found helpful for what that's worth. It does require a certain amount of the other person being willing to let you do this, but when you're stuck in an argument with someone, repeat back what you hear them saying and try to get it as close to accurate to quote as you can. Not mockingly. Don't do the oh, you want that, do you? But repeat it back in an active and engaging way. So, without adding any color commentary. So Karen says, this coupon says I can use it through Sunday. Instead of arguing back, you say, so what I'm hearing you say, Karen, is that the coupon is good through Sunday. Is that correct? See, and then you're giving back that you duplicate, you understand, you heard what she said. And you're not responding immediately with, I don't care, Karen, because it's Tuesday and you're drunk. See, you're not repeating back what she said. You're not actively engaged. You're not empathizing. You're not listening. You're just pointing out that it doesn't matter if the coupon was good through Sunday because it's Tuesday and she's drunk. So instead, try to actively say, okay, this is what I hear you saying. Is that what you're saying? And in doing that, you might find ground there. You establish some ground. One last bit of advice, and it's a much more civil response, right? One last bit of advice I found is to practice gratitude, which is interesting. And this is always my favorite piece of advice, right? I talk about this all the time. If there's one gift I'm thankful for above all others from God, it's a capacity to feel gratitude. When people are kind, or even if it's just a minor thing, be openly grateful to them. Thank people for their accomplishments, even when those accomplishments don't immediately benefit you. People enjoy the company of someone who's grateful for them. And they're willing to remain more civil. If you are like, here's this situation where you and I are diametrically opposed and we're having the worst of times matching up on that. But I am so grateful that you did this over here. You organized that bake sale, or you sent a card on my birthday, or you did whatever. Just being grateful for that part brings that opposition part out of alignment, and you can find common ground easier, and it's civil. A survey conducted in 2016 found 75% of Americans thought incivility had reached crisis levels, and 56% of them expected it to increase. So at the risk of kind of sounding like an old man shouting, back in the good old days, I do think that incivility is on the rise. And as I said, I've been very guilty of it too. But I hope that we can find a way back to being good to one another by listening, by being grateful, by refusing to let the worst in ourselves come out when we're met with the worst of others, and by trying to actively hear and be heard. God bless. Have a wonderful week. Take care.